Hello, hello, for all my, I don't even know how many listeners listen to this stuff or watch it. But hello, all. Uh, Back in the good old podcast in the pickup. Uh, Once again, it's just the fun way to do it. As things get colder, well, who knows? I still walk the dogs even when it's cold, so they just might be shorter. So we'll see. Anyways, I have been kind of going back and forth on what to talk about this week for my Ag Uncensored newsletter, podcast, circus show, whatever you want to call it. And I did record one the other day, kind of talking about that I didn't put out there, by the way, about we're building all this great software and hardware and stuff, but when you really look down at it, we're all storing it in a few different systems, really. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, maybe a few other things in there. Okay, so we're using broader systems. What do farmers use? A majority of them for, say, like accounting. They use QuickBooks. They don't, or things like that. Broad-based accounting systems. For their P&L, do they use a specific ag P&L thing? Not really. I mean, there are some, clearly. We're talking maybe, I don't know, 10,000-ish, with all the systems out there probably using some sort of, more ag-based P&L. Maybe it's a little higher. Uh, Most use Excel or maybe Google Sheets now, or that type of thing. Probably a few even on the Apple side there. I can't even remember what it's called. Most use those broad systems. Okay. Anything banking related, eh, banking software, which really gets into accounting and all that stuff. So, uh, you know, and then they're playing with all these little dinky apps, and they maybe have access to 10 different things, but they use maybe one thing, and what that main app is really weather, but really most of them have a normal broad weather app, and that's really what they're looking at most of the time. Uh, because these broad systems, they are broad, but they do cover like 90% of what most need. It's really that 10% that want more, and then, as I've talked about, then there's 10% that are kind of curious and play with more specific stuff, but 80% are in the we're using broad systems because you just don't need the intricacy. And if they are into more, trying, if that 80% is dabbling into precision ag and ag tech, it's using the core OEM systems, really. John Deere, Panorama with AGCO, or the thing with CNH that's new, their field something or whatever. I mean, that's kind of where we're at, aren't we? Uh, yeah, there's a few other systems that are, semi-popular, but when you look at the real total addressable market, I'm talking pretty small share of people that actually use it, that actually pay for it. And these are what we're dealing with. And down economy, it's not a lot of money going extra into that to use these other apps. And that's something that's been on my mind a lot. Uh, as I've talked about and brought up this concept of open FMIS, and then, I was thinking of the next big idea or other thing to build an ag that farmers would use, or, ag businesses would use, both. That'd be logical. And, I get, when I really think of it, I get kind of caught. I'm like, okay, maybe the idea, I got like 20, 30 different ideas for different various agricultural software apps of different sorts. All of them are generally viable. People would use them. How many? It kind of depends. Some are more niche, some are really broad. Some would wouldn't cost too much to build. Some would be insanely expensive to build. And then I think in my head, okay, let's just do the math, the quick math. Uh, one of the things I've wanted to build is kind of this, like I said, using kind of this open FMIS part to kind of get people in and get others in easier. And if you really want to call it something, that the business part would really be like the Shopify of agriculture. And I use Shopify for I just actually converted some stuff over for Boundary, my business right now that I run. It's kind of a side hustle. Maybe it'll turn into more. Um, that's why I'm actually switching my things to Shopify. I was doing things kind of separately, separate systems, and then I was looking back at Shopify. I used it a little bit. It's like, well, everything's here. Everything's kind of a few clicks, little configuration, but I can basically do everything there. I can build my website, I can do my CRM stuff, I can do my financial stuff. There's a million plugins you can add for all these other tools, and it's just kind of built a little more user friendly versus call it WordPress, which I was using to implement these other things, and then some custom software stuff that still use. It's just uh, it's hard. It takes money and time to keep custom stuff up. Power in it, but yeah, there's risk in it too, just like anything else. Of course, there's risk in using other apps of someone else's because maybe that company falls and you can't use it if you're reliant on it, blah, blah, blah. Well, Shopify in general ain't going away. Might reduce, but there's so many e-commerce businesses built on it. It's insane. Anyways, getting to the point. So just playing with it more recently and trying to redo my website, which I did. Go to boundary.com, check all my crap out. There's all sorts of stuff there, and I'll be advertising that myself. But it got me thinking of, okay, what if we made the Shopify of ag? That'd be kind of cool. Uh, farmer set up their own, they're selling stuff. Okay, so you set up a Shopify page, you're selling stuff. You just say, well, you're not selling it directly. Of course, some would, cattle and specialty crops and stuff like that. So that would work great for them. You're selling corn and beans. I'm surrounded by corn and beans right now. Okay, those are your products you're selling. And maybe you got a service. I do a little custom combine, custom planting, whatever. Add those things in there, and then there's some other modules, plugins from other companies that use it, and you have this open part about it, and blah blah blah, all that. And it's like, okay, what could you actually make on this thing? How would you have to go about it? Well, you have to raise some money right away to really do it right. Call it 5 million, and then you get going, and maybe you get $1 million the first 2 years revenue or something. And then you gotta go raise 10 million, and you gotta, a couple years later, then you gotta raise 25 or 50, in the hopes to, you're just trying to trickle up, and then at some point you're hoping, you raised close to 100 million and you're making 30 million a year. That's kind of seems to be kind of where the world is right now. Maybe we can do it for a little cheaper with AI and vibe coding and all that, which I'm getting less convinced that that's going to really just do everything, but I could be wrong. It is a little cheaper to do it these days. So you can do a little more. Well, with something like Shopify for Ag, you need to do a lot more. You have to get a lot more people in, and you gotta get out to more. It's like, okay, how many people is what's really viable? And I'm not going to get through all the numbers, but between large farms, smaller farms, the 80% they ain't going to pay anything but just want to use it, but then they're connecting through an ag retailer that's using it. They're using like a mega account, paying $10,000 a month, crap like that, maybe more. You add it all up, I was like, well, after 7 to 10 years, but I'll say 7, maybe I can get to 50 million in revenue. I'll say that's best case. That might be best case scenario. That's North America. Okay, go worldwide, go bigger. Let's call it 100 million. Worldwide, you can get. more broad than any other farm management software. You do all these things. Of course, you need big staff. It all costs a lot. You probably have to get to that 100 million a year revenue mark. You probably have to raise like at least $200 million these days still, because of just, coding might be a little cheaper, more efficient, but you still got to market. You still got to support this crap, pay people, top end people, and then raising 200 million, you probably get away 90% of your equity, and you're left with 10% between you and your partners, which you got to have some partners to start out with. Tap a good chunk, maybe just as much as you. Got to get some new employees. Your company might be worth $1 billion. Who buys you? Just like only a handful that would ever do it or could. And say you just get all that figured out and you sell it for $1 billion and you just really don't have much left. Maybe, who knows, $10-20 million. Great. Still doing better than definitely the majority of people on planet. But through all of that, you're not going to pay yourself much more than you'd probably get paid at any other normal thing, as even a CEO. Is all that worth that? Good Lord, thinking about that, just everything you'd have to go through. And I know people that have gone through this in their various ways. Not quite that, but big software, running big things, and some have done really well at it. It's really hard to do. It's even rarer to do now. It's all that worth it? Or do you find some more niche product that you only need like 5-10 people, but you can get to maybe 5 million a year in revenue, or maybe a couple million, and maybe worth 10 to 20 or something. And you have more niche, so you actually might be more viable to purchase because someone's like, oh, I can make this a lot bigger and all that. But you own more of it, and you basically get the same, and you can maybe build it up in less time. I've known people have done that, and it's actually worked good. Of course, sometimes that can draw out. That could take 10-20 years to build that thing in agriculture. So that's a thing too. All in all, there's all these things we can build. This is the point. There's all these amazing things we can build in ag. Yet, there are, the Shopify of ag is a great idea. I think it could actually work. If anyone wants to throw me a bunch of money to build it, I can build it. I'm not worried about that. I can build any of these things. No one's ever thrown me a bunch of money to build anything. Like, when I see companies get million, 2 million, 5 million, and I'm like, good Lord, I feel like I could build so many amazing things, multiple things with that. I've never gotten that. Anyone out there wants to throw me a bunch of money to build some really cool shit, by all means, I'm here. I'm available. I've got a bunch of great ideas that can make money. But the process is still a pain in the butt. A normal person usually can't do it. It is hard. I can do it. I've done it. I'm involved in it. I haven't sold business for a ton of money. I haven't, not killing it. I'm kind of in between a lot of different things right now, trying to figure out that path. This is why I'm thinking about it. It's like, what actually makes sense? I've known all these groups that can do all these big things, and there's other groups that are trying to do big things and build big things. Not a lot of money to grab right now, so that's a problem. But some have been doing good, and they're still doing good. Some are kind of in between. Either way, is the juice worth the squeeze to build these things? When, to my point right away, 80% of people just use the broad-based tech out there now. They really do. So that's got me thinking, okay, in the Shopify example, could I just use it now? Could I use other systems that are pretty well known and used? I mean, multi-billion-dollar companies that have these softwares that put so much extra stuff that we don't really get in ag, that don't build. We use their services because we don't want to build them. Google, Amazon, Microsoft, a plethora of others that, for different services, different things. Gosh, it's like, could I Could you just build what you want with their stuff? And I've been thinking about that a lot more. And I've had a colleague of mine who's he's a Google whiz, and he's convinced that, at least for farmers and smaller businesses, but mostly farmers, they could, through the Google tools and what they generally want, their basic accounting, basic mapping, basic, data analysis, basic XYZ. Actually, 90% of that can be done by just plugging the right things together within the Google suite. And it functions, it'll always function, it'll work, it'll connect to a bunch of stuff. It's not going to be like exactly what you want, but it's like 90% of what you want and probably 90% of what you need. You fill in the other gaps of the things you don't have with maybe some other specific ag tool. Okay, that's fine. You know, one of the majors, maybe another larger input group, something they have. And maybe you're good. And actually, if you have a little higher little coding experience, you can actually get those things to transfer probably into your kind of little custom Google Farm suite. It's like, is that where we're going? Because it seems like that maybe where we're going. And for Shopify, when I think if I put the farmer cap on, I don't know if there's some kind of mapping things in there. So I mean, that's where I get in my head. It's like, okay, probably can do all these other things, but can you do mapping? And can you like put data towards that field boundary within something like that? I don't know if that exists in Shopify, but I know you could build a plugin for it, and you could build one for it. I've actually looked into it. I almost did myself. I might still on the boundary end actually, because Shopify's e-commerce. That's kind of an e-commerce thing. It's actually not overly hard, and you can get as complicated as you want, and you could charge there. It's like, well, shit. Why build the Shopify of Ag when it literally already exists? I just have to build some specific modules for it. But it's already this channel. It's already got all these other things in it that I just don't have to build. As things progress, I could tie into some of those things. But the umbrella infrastructure exists. Could that work? Might that might make sense. And this is, I think, where some of the majors were going. They were trying to get in ag. That was the idea. It's like, okay, we could probably do some of this stuff. Now, the problem with ag is, though, why this isn't really done. For one, I think in the past it couldn't really be done. I think that's changing, but ag is still weird. Um, you know, there's just so many niche oddity things. There is a need for specialized software. Especially the larger the business it is, and the bigger things you do need some more customization. You need, it's got to fit those things. That's why people pay for it, because the main big systems can't do that. But just little rumblings I'm hearing. I'll say one of the largest ag retailers in the world seemingly is starting to see this. And while they use some of the largest AgTech software companies, they've bought some of them and they've honed it in for their own thing, but it's not used as much as they thought. They've paid tons of money into supporting and licensing some of these other major softwares, but it works for a percentage of the business, but there's missing parts. But they really need to bring in data and the enterprise side of a giant business. They're actually going to do most of their ag data through things like I think I want to say something under Oracle. some, one of their big enterprise things. They're going to do like more under that, or one of them like that, that's just giant. And then they're going to implement more stuff on Salesforce, and they'll create their own custom things within there and within the Oracle thing. These little modules. They're not going to build and license some big thing because it doesn't exist. It can't exist. We've found that out. Even the most used and most popular software and tools around it, things out there, the names, a lot of them don't actually make money for the company. They are there to basically be a loss leader to support the other processes. My John Deere is a great example. I mean, they don't charge for it, and that costs a lot of money for them to take care of. I think they want to. They're figuring out ways to try to do that, and all the others are, they're there in their different realms. FieldView under Bayer, megalithic costs. Maybe it's brought value back, selling more seed and chemical and stuff like that. That's how they justify it. Sure, if that's what makes them sleep at night, by all means. I don't think it's exactly the case. It's made its money back, but it's kept its influence up. Maybe at times the stock, it's helped that kind of prop it up. I don't know if it's there anymore. Either way, those things don't make money. So the only like giant software things that make money are the giant software things, the megas out there. Are we slowly just fighting the wrong battle? At least when it comes to the simpler things. There's always going to be need for some custom processes for agriculture. There's no doubt. But do we build those custom processes on our own infrastructure? Or do we build those custom processes on the megas infrastructure? Do we start building more things within, Salesforce modules and plugins, or connect to Google better, connect to Microsoft better, connect to Amazon better, connect to Apple better? Maybe, at least for probably the farmer side. That's kind of where I'm more thinking. It's like, can we? I mean, to a point, I think you probably could. But like I said, there's customized features that, those are proprietary systems. You're just, some of the things that you want for ag, what the user sees, say the farmer or agronomist, they need it in a simple way. Now, broad data, you can do that. That's why people use all these giant systems. You can get that in a simple way. But when it comes to agriculture stuff, can that work? I don't know. That's a tougher question, because it's like, okay, these tools have been around for a while. It's not like they're brand new. Some of these capabilities have been around for quite a while. If it was pretty straightforward, we would have done it, right? And maybe people have looked into it and they're like, yeah, I mean, it covers a decent population of our users that would do this, but just, it needs more. It's not enough. Yeah, that might be the case. Gotta get the dogs quick. Come on, puppies. What do you dogs think? Turn this. You can see him. Oh, there's Dauber. Anyways, so I'm readjusting my camera. What does that future look like here? Are we just headed to use others' stuff with our kind of custom modular processes? Or do we need to build our own Shopify for ag, or things like that? Do we need to build our own kind of versions of these big things? Or do we just use their big things and kind of create within their worlds? Honestly, I think we probably just got to do both. Because, I mean, that's what the world does now. Not everybody uses all these little things. Sometimes they're too broad. Not every giant business uses everything Google or Microsoft has. They use a good amount of them, but then they usually have some very specific stuff. Yeah, but we should probably fit some of these broader tools in better. If to my kind of colleague's point, the basic things you could set up in Google Suite and your simple note taking, simple kind of the accounting spreadsheet stuff. You could, attributing data on a field and some of these basic things. Yeah, you could do that for a farm and it'll cover, say, G Suite, a good chunk of it. And that could be a service in itself. I've told them, I was like, why don't you just do that? Why don't you just set that crap up? And he's like, well, maybe I will. But of course, that still takes time. It's a service. Everyone's going to want to set and configure it a little differently, especially when the options are there to actually do it. Oh, there's some horses. Well, here's some barking. Yeah, easy. And that's, are you going to get everybody? No. I mean, there'll probably be at some cost there. It's still going to be, with all the different things even G Suite does, you're still going to, it's going to cost probably 20, 30, 40, maybe $50 a month with some other things. Because, I mean, they don't do everything. So you might need some other Google plugins from other businesses. Just this kind of same cycle repeats. So it's like, well, would it be better if we just really hone in on the agriculture stuff? Someone creates that. Now, there are some groups that are, I mean, kind of attempting to do it. I mean, John Deere in itself is trying to do that. The other major, just move in here. Other major OEMs are just kind of trying to do that to the point. There's groups like AgVend. They're kind of trying to do that. FieldView's trying to do that. There's yeah, Bushell's trying to do that to a point. There's an interest around creating kind of this Shopify ag, but does all the money raised, all these things, does it really make sense? Or do we think about making some modules in some of the bigger systems so that the bigger groups that do use these things, I mean, last corporate I worked at, they used all G Suite stuff. It's like, gosh, maybe they should just take what they have and add some modules into that and use it a little more better. And I think they've actually are talking about doing some of those things, or they were. What that means on a corporate level is really complicated, and it's still expensive. These tools by the majors are not cheap. They can be more expensive than the specific ag thing that was built. It's custom, more attuned to the industry. I mean, seriously, these things are really goddamn expensive. So that's the other thing is, do those business models really fit with the ag ones? Well, the ag business models are kind of weird because like software doesn't really make money. Most ag software businesses don't really make money. A lot of it, unless they get sold. So, I mean, this is inherently the problem. Oh, you're getting tired, aren't you? See, they know I got to go after this amount of time. So I guess in the end, what I'm trying to ask is, for all you listening out there and reading, do we kind of create a hybrid approach? Do we build something like the Shopify bag? Do we really hone in on that idea and like everyone does it? I think you almost like the entire industry would have to kind of be like, yeah, we're going to do this part, we're going to do this part, but who's going to be that core thing? And that's where my open source thing comes in. It's like, well, that should be part of it because you kind of need that in my mind. Or do we just not do that and we build things on those bigger platforms? Or do we do a little bit of both? Let's just say it's a question that comes up my head. I don't really have the exact answer, but I think it's worth we play around a little more and we explore whether some of the other giant systems out there, where they do fit, where they can fit for, a good amount of people. And maybe it's call it 20-30% of agriculture wants the real specific stuff because they just want more intricacy, or they need that for their 20-30% of customers. And then the other kind of 80-70% that are just more broad and you can deal with simpler things, maybe we have the option for them for those simpler things. It's kind of where I'm thinking there's a marriage, because those other things aren't going away. It's not AgTech software that's not going away. It's a different model, but maybe we need to expand that very centric model into just for our industry, into like, we need to use some more of the other outside tools or take some of our stuff and put it into their stuff a little better. It's also expensive and hard. It's not easy to do. But more of that, I think, is coming. Just the way tech works, I don't think we can probably avoid it. It's just how and where we do that. But there's my thoughts for this week. Curious on what you think, because I do know people that are doing this to a point. That's, I know farms that that's how they do their record keeping. That's how they track their data. They just put it in Google or Microsoft and they're good enough. And then they print it out and they put it on a little booklet and whatever. A lot do that. That's what they do. Majority actually do that. Can we add some things to help them a little bit there? Make that a little better? I think so. Same time, we do need specific stuff because, I'm in a GM vehicle and sure, maybe Apple connects to this, but it doesn't connect to everything in here either. There's very proprietary things in this specific model, just as there is with OEM equipment. There's just very specific things and that has to handle, and how you integrate with that, how you send data there. So there is very specific stuff you need. It's not good or bad, it's reality. So some things to think about. We should probably do a little more around this, but I've already gone past my normal amount, so I'll check you later, man, and gals and everyone else. Dogs, dog listeners. We'll see you later.